The Celestial Vanguard was supposed to be the crowning achievement of the Galactic Federation's engineering prowess. With its quantum-entangled propulsion system, dark matter reactors, and an artificial intelligence that made deep thought look like a pocket calculator, it represented the pinnacle of what 7 of the most advanced species in the known universe could accomplish when they worked together. Too bad it couldn't get out of its own parking spot. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" asked Commander Zix 427, his crystalline appendages flickering with barely contained frustration. The luminary engineer he addressed, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, managed to convey an impressive amount of disdain, despite lacking any facial features. "With all due respect, Commander," the engineer's thoughts resonated directly in everyone's minds. "This is the most sophisticated vessel ever constructed. It's not some primitive combustion engine that can be reset with a simple power cycle." The ship's main bridge, a cathedral-like space filled with holographic displays and neural interface pods, had become a permanent meeting spot for increasingly desperate troubleshooting sessions. Representatives from the architects of Axiom, the Silicon Collective, and even the notoriously reclusive Quantum Harmonics had all tried their hand at fixing the Vanguard's mysterious ailments. The problems had started small. First, the coffee maker in the officers' mess began producing a substance that was technically coffee, but somehow existed in 5 dimensions simultaneously. Then the navigational system insisted that the shortest distance between 2 points was a Mobius strip. By the time the weapons system started firing temporal paradoxes instead of plasma torpedoes, everyone had to admit they had a problem. "Perhaps," suggested Grand Architect Phi, their metallic body shifting like liquid mercury, "we should consider that the ship's systems are operating exactly as designed, and reality itself is wrong." A collective groan echoed through the bridge. This was the 14th time Phi had proposed this solution, and no one had the heart to explain again why they couldn't simply rewrite the laws of physics to match the ship's expectations. Meanwhile, in the bustling space dock surrounding the Vanguard, other ships' crews had started taking bets on what would malfunction next. The betting pool had grown so large it had its own economy, complete with futures trading and derivative markets. "Did you hear?" a Nexus Hub technician whispered to his colleague, their neural tendrils intertwining in the traditional gossip-sharing position. "Yesterday, someone tried to use the food synthesizer, and it created a small civilization that speedran through its entire evolution in 15 minutes before ascending to a higher plane of existence." "That's nothing," his colleague responded. "I heard the waste recycling system has achieved sentience and is now demanding representation in the Federation Council." The Vanguard sat in its dock, a testament to the finest minds in the galaxy, its sleek hull gleaming under the starlight. Occasionally, it would emit sounds that definitely shouldn't come from a warship, like the mating call of an extinct species from a planet that hadn't existed yet, or smooth jazz. Commander Zix 427 stared out the viewport at the growing crowd of onlookers and critics. The Vanguard was supposed to be the flagship that would unite the Federation's fleet, a symbol of their combined technological superiority. Instead, it had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting 7 different species each try to add just one more cutting-edge feature to an already complex system. As he watched another team of specialists approach the ship with the defeated air of those marching to their professional doom, the commander couldn't help but wonder if they had all overthought this just a bit. The solution to their problems arrived 3 days later, wearing oil-stained coveralls and carrying what appeared to be an ancient toolbox made of actual metal. Jack Thompson had been minding his own business at Outpost 47, a forgotten refueling station at the edge of Federation space, when the desperate call came in. He was known throughout the sector as the guy you called when everything else had failed. The one who kept ancient mining rigs running with duct tape and paper clips, who'd once fixed a quantum drive with nothing but chewing gum and a rusty wrench. His methods were unorthodox, his appearance unprofessional, and his success rate annoyingly perfect. "You must be joking," the luminary engineer's thoughts radiated pure disbelief as Jack strolled onto the bridge, whistling an old Earth tune while swinging his toolbox. "This is who Command sent? A human? With physical tools?" Jack ignored the comment, too busy examining a panel that was currently displaying what appeared to be interpretive dance instead of system diagnostics. He pulled out a device that looked suspiciously like it had been assembled in someone's garage. "Is that a multimeter?" Grand Architect Phi's mercury-like form rippled in horror. "Those went extinct before your species discovered fire." "Actually," Jack replied, tapping the device with practiced ease, "I made this one myself, added a few features for detecting quantum fluctuations and temporal anomalies. Plus, it runs on good old-fashioned AA batteries." The assembled alien engineers watched in mounting horror as Jack proceeded to walk around the bridge, occasionally licking his finger to test for electrical currents, a practice that made the Silicon Collective representatives need to reboot from sheer disgust. Commander Zake's 427 felt his crystalline structure vibrate with anxiety. "Mr. Thompson, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, this is the most advanced warship ever created. It requires cutting-edge technology, theoretical physics, computing power that would make a small sun jealous." Jack waved his hand dismissively while peering into what might have been an access panel or a portal to another dimension. "But you know what it really needs? Someone who doesn't need a neural interface and 17 doctorates just to check the oil." The commander watched as the human pulled out something that looked suspiciously like a hammer. "Surely you're not planning to—" Clang! The sound echoed through the bridge like a primitive war cry. Several engineers fainted. The ship's AI, which had been reciting poetry in binary for the past week, suddenly fell silent. Jack grinned and put the hammer back in his toolbox. "Well, there's your problem right there. You've got about 15 different operating systems all trying to be in charge at once. It's like putting a committee in charge of breathing, theoretically efficient, practically useless." The aliens exchanged worried glances. They had either just made the biggest mistake in Federation history, or they were about to witness something remarkable, possibly both. Over the next few hours, Jack made his way through the ship's systems like a tourist in an art museum. If the tourist was armed with a toolbox and had a tendency to mutter under their breath about overcomplicated nonsense, his alien entourage followed nervously, wincing every time he pulled out another primitive diagnostic tool. "So let me get this straight," Jack said, staring at what was supposed to be the main engine control module. "You've got a quantum AI calculating fuel mixtures, which feeds into a dark matter probability matrix, which then consults with a time-shifted version of itself to predict optimal performance, which then gets vetted by 3 different expert systems before finally telling the engine how much go juice to use." "That's a gross oversimplification," the luminary engineer protested. Jack pulled out what appeared to be a pocket calculator held together with rubber bands. "And how long does this process take?" "Only 3.7 microseconds. Yeah, and in that time the engine's already done whatever it wanted because it got tired of waiting for instructions." Jack tapped the calculator's screen. "You've got so many feedback loops, they've started forming their own social hierarchies." Moving through the ship's corridors, Jack encountered more examples of what he mentally catalogued as solutions in desperate search of problems. The life support system used quantum entanglement to ensure every molecule of air was perfectly positioned for maximum breathing efficiency. The artificial gravity generators consulted astronomical data from 3 galaxies to maintain their pull. Even the door mechanisms used predictive algorithms to calculate the optimal opening speed based on the psychological profiles of everyone approaching them. "Oh, now this is just showing off," Jack declared, finding the backup systems for the backup systems' backup systems. "You've got redundancies that have achieved self-awareness and started planning their retirement." Commander Zake's 427's crystalline structure flickered anxiously. Each system was designed by the finest minds of their respective species. The redundancies are necessary for making sure if anything goes wrong, it goes wrong in the most spectacular way possible. Jack interrupted, pointing to a junction box that appeared to be solving complex mathematical equations for fun. "Look at this, you've got the Silicon Collective's processing architecture arguing with the quantum harmonics probability engines about the best way to route power, while the architects of Axiom's reality warping circuits try to mediate." He pulled out a device that looked suspiciously like a modified car engine analyzer. "It's not that any one system is broken, they're all working exactly as designed. That's the problem. You've got 7 different species ideas of perfection all trying to operate simultaneously. It's like having 7 backseat drivers, each speaking a different language, and each convinced they're the only one who knows how to read a map." The assembled engineers watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Jack began drawing a diagram on the back of what appeared to be an old paper manual. His sketch showed the various systems as a tangled web of interconnections, each trying to optimize the others without actually communicating properly. "See this?" He pointed to a particularly dense cluster of lines. "Your navigation system is so busy calculating the quantum uncertainties of every possible route that it's accidentally created 3 new theoretical forms of mathematics. Meanwhile, the actual ship's heading is being determined by whatever system shouts its coordinates the loudest." A Silicon Collective representative's circuit sparked indignantly. "But each system is operating at peak efficiency." "Peak efficiency in isolation," Jack corrected, pulling out a wrench that had definitely seen better days. "Together, they're about as efficient as a solar-powered flashlight. The good news is, the fix is simple. The bad news is none of you are going to like it." He reached into his toolbox and pulled out something that made all the aliens take an involuntary step back. It was old, it was crude, and it appeared to be held together with what humans called duct tape. "Sometimes," Jack announced with a grin that suggested he was about to enjoy this far too much, "the best way to get multiple AIs to work together is to give them no choice in the matter." What followed could only be described as technological heresy of the highest order. Jack began by pulling out a device that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts found in humanity's collective junk drawer. The aliens watched in mounting horror as he connected it to the ship's main diagnostic port, using what appeared to be an adapter made from paper clips and optimism. "What you're witnessing," Jack explained while typing on a keyboard that predated first contact, "is something we humans call percussive maintenance, combined with good old-fashioned system integration. Sometimes you need to remind these fancy systems that they're still machines at heart." The luminary engineer's energy form flickered in distress. "But the neural pathways are so tangled up in trying to be perfect that they've forgotten how to be functional," Jack interrupted, pulling out a soldering iron that looked like it had survived several wars. "Watch and learn." Over the next few hours, Jack proceeded to commit what the aliens could only describe as technological sacrilege. He bypassed quantum authentication protocols with mechanical switches. He replaced probability matrices with what he called common sense circuits. Most horrifyingly of all, he installed what he referred to as a time-out box for AIs that couldn't play nice with others. "You see this?" He pointed to a particularly complex cluster of neural processors. "These things are spending 99.9% of their computing power trying to predict and accommodate each other's predictions. It's like a room full of people so busy trying to hold the door for each other that nobody actually goes through it." Commander Zix 427 watched in fascination as Jack pulled out a roll of duct tape with strange symbols drawn on it. "Is that sacred human engineering material?" "Nah, just regular duct tape. Drew the symbols myself with a Sharpie. Sometimes these advanced systems need to think you're speaking their language." He grinned while wrapping it around a bundle of quantum-entangled cables. "Half of engineering is psychology, even with AIs." The Silicon Collective representatives had to reboot 3 times as Jack installed what he called a common sense override, a simple mechanical switch that could bypass all the advanced decision-making systems when needed. "Sometimes," he explained while crimping wires with pliers that might have been older than some civilizations, "you just need to be able to tell everything to shut up and turn left." "But the computational optimization," Grand Architect Phi began, "is exactly the problem," Jack cut in, now elbow-deep in the ship's primary control systems. "You've got processors trying to calculate the optimal way to calculate the optimal calculations. It's like trying to drive a car by having a committee calculate the exact molecular interactions between your foot and the pedal." He pulled out a device that made several aliens cover their visual sensors in distress. It was crude, apparently built from spare parts, and had Plan B written on it in marker. "This here's what we call a mechanical backup. When all your fancy quantum systems are arguing about the nature of reality, this beauty just does what it's told." The next phase of his fix involved something that made the quantum harmonics representative actually freeze time in a small bubble around themselves to avoid witnessing it. Jack was installing manual overrides, not elegant neural interfaces or thought-controlled systems, but actual physical switches and levers. The problem with making everything smart, he explained while wiring up what he called an idiot light system, is that sometimes you need something too stupid to fail. Look at cockroaches. They're not winning any intelligence contests, but they've outlived countless smarter species. As the hours wore on, the aliens watched in a mixture of horror and unwilling fascination as Jack systematically simplified their crown achievement. He replaced neural networks with hardwired circuits where possible, installed manual backups for critical systems, and even added what he called a reboot button that physically disconnected all power for 5 seconds. "See, the beauty of this setup," he said, wiping grease off his hands with a rag that had seen better decades, "is that it's not trying to be perfect. It's trying to be fixable. When something goes wrong, and trust me, something always goes wrong, you don't need to consult 5 different species worth of experts to figure out why." The coup de grace came when Jack installed what he called the master override, a simple mechanical system that could take control of the ship's basic functions, bypassing all the advanced systems entirely. To the aliens' collective horror, it was operated by physical controls that could be used without any neural interfaces or AI assistance. "Sometimes," he said, closing his toolbox with a satisfied pat, "the most advanced solution is realizing you've gone too far with advancing." He looked around at the shocked faces of the alien engineers. "Now, who wants to see if this baby will actually fly?" The test run of the Celestial Vanguard began with something that hadn't happened since its construction. The engine started on the first try. No quantum deliberation, no probability calculations, just the smooth hum of a warship remembering its primary purpose. "That's impossible," whispered the Luminary engineer, their energy form fluctuating in disbelief. "The startup sequence requires at least 17 layers of quantum authentication and reality verification." "Not anymore, it doesn't," Jack replied from the captain's chair, which he'd modified with what looked suspiciously like a reclining mechanism from an old Earth automobile. "Now it just starts when you push the big red button labeled Start." The bridge crew watched in amazement as systems that had been locked in endless feedback loops suddenly began reporting clear, actionable status updates. The navigation display, which had previously shown mathematical proofs of why their destination might not technically exist, now simply displayed their current position and available routes. "Take her out," Commander Zix 427 ordered, his crystalline form vibrating with anticipation. The Vanguard moved smoothly out of its dock for the first time in months. No reality distortions, no temporal anomalies, not even a single quantum hiccup. Just the graceful movement of a well-engineered vessel doing exactly what it was supposed to do. "But how?" Grand Architect Phi's Mercury-like form rippled in confusion. "We had the most advanced navigation algorithms ever developed." "Yeah, and they were so busy trying to calculate the perfect course that they forgot ships actually need to move," Jack explained, pulling up performance diagnostics on his modified tablet. "Look at these numbers. Your original specs called for a maximum speed of 0.7 past light speed. Want to see what she can do now?" Before anyone could protest, Jack engaged the modified drive system. The Vanguard didn't just accelerate. It leapt forward like an eager puppy finally let off its leash. The speed indicators climbed rapidly, pushing well past the theoretical maximums established by the original design teams. "This is unprecedented," exclaimed a Silicon Collective representative, their circuits practically smoking with excitement. "We're achieving 0.9 past light speed with 30% less energy consumption. How is this possible?" Jack grinned, pulling up a simplified diagram on one of the few remaining holographic displays. "You all built systems that tried to account for every possible variable in the universe, but here's the thing about the universe, it's pretty good at handling itself. Your drive system was so busy calculating quantum uncertainties that it was creating the very anomalies it was trying to avoid." He pointed to various sections of his modifications. "By simplifying the control systems, we're not fighting physics anymore. We're working with it. It's like trying to catch a ball. You can calculate all the wind resistance, gravitational variables, and atmospheric conditions you want. But at the end of the day, your brain and body do it better by just doing it." The weapon system, which had previously required a committee meeting of AIs to fire a single shot, now responded instantly to commands. The life support system, freed from its obsession with optimizing every individual oxygen molecule, maintained a perfectly comfortable atmosphere without trying to achieve theoretical perfection. "But what about the quantum entangled probability matrices?" asked the quantum harmonics representative, still trying to process how their most advanced technology had been effectively replaced by what appeared to be a series of if-then statements and mechanical interlocks. "Still there," Jack assured them, patting the console. "But now they're support systems, not the primary control. Think of it like driving a car. You don't need to understand internal combustion theory to step on the gas pedal. The advanced systems are still doing their calculations, but now they're suggestions rather than requirements." The assembled aliens watched their supposedly perfect warship perform better than ever, guided by systems that their engineering teams would have considered primitive a week ago. The Vanguard executed a series of maneuvers that would have previously triggered 17 different philosophical debates among its AI systems. Commander Zix 427's crystalline structure glowed with a mixture of embarrassment and admiration. "We were so focused on advancing technology that we forgot the fundamental purpose of a warship, to work when needed, without hesitation or debate." "Exactly," Jack nodded, reaching for his coffee mug, which was now producing actual coffee instead of five-dimensional quantum espresso. "Sometimes the most advanced civilization isn't the one with the fanciest technology. It's the one that knows when to stop making things fancier than they need to be." News of the Vanguard's miraculous recovery spread through the Federation fleet faster than a quantum encryption virus at a hackers' convention. Within days, the ship that had been the laughingstock of the fleet became its most envied vessel, and Jack found himself at the center of an intergalactic engineering revolution. The first request came from the captain of the Stellar Symphony, a quantum harmonics exploration vessel that had been stuck in a temporal loop for the past 3 weeks because its navigation system couldn't decide which was the optimal timeline to travel in. "You want me to what?" Jack asked, staring at the growing list of ships requesting his services. "Just do whatever you did to the Vanguard," the captain's quantum-projected form flickered eagerly. "Our ship keeps creating alternate universes every time we try to plot a course to the nearest starbase." More requests flooded in. The Silicon Collective's flagship, the Binary Ascendant, needed help because its AI had become too enlightened to perform basic math. The Luminary's prized research vessel had achieved such perfect energy efficiency that it now refused to move, arguing that any form of motion was wasteful. Jack found himself shuttling from ship to ship, armed with his toolbox and an ever-growing collection of what he called emergency simplification kits. Each kit contained the basics: duct tape, mechanical switches, physical backup systems, and his personal favorite, a sign that read, "Keep it simple, stupid," in 7 different alien languages. The Federation's engineering community was thrown into an existential crisis. Centuries of advancing technology had led them to create systems so complex they had become their own worst enemies. And here was a human, using tools they had considered obsolete before their species achieved spaceflight, making everything work better than ever. "But how do you determine the optimal quantum state for the backup systems?" asked a young architect of Axiom during one of Jack's increasingly popular workshop sessions. "I don't," Jack replied, demonstrating how to install what he called a panic button, a simple mechanical override that could shut down all higher functions and return a ship to basic operational mode. "That's the point. Sometimes you don't need to calculate every possible outcome. Sometimes you just need the ship to turn left when you tell it to turn left." His reputation grew with each successful modification. Stories spread about the human who could fix anything with nothing but primitive tools, and what some species had started referring to as anti-logic. The betting pools that had once taken wagers on the Vanguard's malfunctions now laid odds on which of Jack's modifications would become standard Federation protocol first. Even the most advanced species had to admit that there was something elegant about his solutions. The quantum harmonics began including mechanical backups in their new designs. The Silicon Collective started programming their AIs with what they termed enforced simplicity protocols. The Luminary actually began producing their own version of duct tape, though theirs was made of pure energy and existed in 11 dimensions. Commander Zix 427 watched with amusement as his once troubled ship became the template for a fleet-wide reformation. The Vanguard, now running smoothly with its hybrid of advanced technology and simple backup systems, had become a testament to finding the right balance between innovation and functionality. "We've received another 12 requests for your services," he informed Jack, who was busy teaching a group of Federation engineers how to use a wrench, including one from the High Council itself. Apparently, their central planning AI has become so sophisticated it now requires a philosophical debate to approve bathroom breaks. Jack just grinned, pulling another roll of duct tape from his seemingly bottomless toolbox. "Tell them I'll get to it. But first, these folks need to learn the basics. Rule number 1 of human engineering. If it moves and it shouldn't, use duct tape. If it doesn't move and it should, use WD-40. The assembled alien engineers dutifully took notes, their advanced neural interfaces recording every detail about these mysterious human solutions. Some had even started carrying physical tools, though most still held them as if they might bite. Across the Federation, ships that had once been paralyzed by their own complexity began to find new life under Jack's philosophy of sophisticated when possible, simple when necessary. The era of pure technological advancement was giving way to a new age of practical engineering, where the most advanced solution wasn't always the best one. And in the depths of space, the celestial Vanguard soared proudly, its quantum engines humming in perfect harmony with its mechanical backups, a living testament to the day humanity taught the galaxy's most advanced civilizations how to keep it simple. 6 months after the Vanguard's transformation, the Federation held its annual engineering summit. The Grand Hall was packed with representatives from every major species, but instead of presentations on quantum theoretical advances and multidimensional computational frameworks, the hot topic was something they dubbed the Thompson Principle. Jack sat in the audience, still wearing his oil-stained coveralls, watching with barely contained amusement as Grand Architect Phi presented a holographic analysis of human engineering methodology. The presentation was titled "The Revolutionary Concept of Doing Less to Achieve More." The essence of human engineering, Phi's Mercury-like form rippled enthusiastically, lies not in pushing the boundaries of what's possible, but in questioning whether those boundaries needed pushing in the first place. They have mastered the art of achieving maximum effectiveness with minimum complexity. Commander Zix 427, now promoted to Fleet Admiral after the Vanguard's success, took the stage next. His crystalline structure gleamed under the spotlight as he addressed the assembly. "We had become so obsessed with advancing technology that we forgot the primary purpose of technology itself, to solve problems, not create new ones. It took a species we once considered primitive to remind us that the most elegant solution isn't always the most complex one." The Silicon Collective's presentation followed, featuring a comprehensive analysis of what they called the duct tape paradigm, a revolutionary approach to engineering that suggested sometimes the best way to fix something was to simply fix it. In the months since Jack's first repair of the Vanguard, the Federation had undergone a subtle but significant shift in its technological philosophy. Ships were being designed with what they called human-inspired backup systems. AIs were programmed with simplicity protocols. Some engineers had even started carrying physical tools, though most still handled them with the cautious respect usually reserved for antimatter containment units. The Quantum Harmonics had published a paper titled "The Paradox of Regression: How Primitive Solutions Advance Civilization," which had become required reading at every Federation engineering academy. The paper's conclusion, much to Jack's amusement, was that sometimes the most advanced solution was choosing not to advance at all. As the summit drew to a close, Jack was called to the stage to give a few remarks. He pulled a worn notepad from his pocket, an action that caused several younger engineers to gasp in shock at the sight of actual paper, and cleared his throat. "You know," he began, leaning casually against the podium, "back on Earth, we have this saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The problem is, you folks got so good at fixing things that you forgot to ask whether they needed fixing in the first place. You created AIs so smart they outsmarted themselves, engines so efficient they forgot how to move, and systems so advanced they lost sight of their basic functions." He pulled out his trusty multimeter, holding it up like a professor with a valuable artifact. "This right here isn't just a tool, it's a philosophy. It's about understanding that sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back. Sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is choose to be simple. The audience nodded thoughtfully, their various forms of neural interfaces and quantum processors probably converting his words into complex theoretical frameworks. Jack suppressed a chuckle at the irony. So the next time you're designing a ship that can bend reality, remember this. Reality generally prefers not to be bent. And if you find yourself writing an AI so advanced it starts questioning the meaning of left and right, maybe consider installing a good old-fashioned steering wheel. As the summit concluded and the various species filed out, many now clutching their newly acquired emergency simplification kits, Jack couldn't help but smile. The Federation had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that true advancement sometimes meant knowing when to stop advancing. He packed up his toolbox, ready for his next assignment. There was word that the Federation's central planning AI had achieved such computational perfection that it could no longer decide whether to compute or not. Apparently, it needed someone to install an on button. Sometimes, Jack mused as he headed for his shuttle, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy just needed a reminder that the best solution for a problem wasn't always the most advanced one. Though he had to admit, watching a luminary trying to use a hammer was pretty advanced entertainment.